I just wanted to do a fun, quick comparison talking about what are the differences between the Decent DE1 and Linea Mini. My approach to talking about machines is more so practical differences. Like, what is it like to use a machine day to day? So obviously I'm way more familiar with the Decent because I've pulled over 1,200 shots on this thing. I've probably only pulled about 100 on Linea Mini in my experience. So I just want to preface that, if that matters at all to you guys. Eventually I'll probably make a dedicated video about the Linea Mini because I personally think it is a much stronger machine in a commercial aspect for something like a coffee cart. When it comes to home though, it's kind of a hard thing to convince people to spend $5,400 on a Linea Mini. I think for most folk, there are just better machines out there for the money. Machines that let you explore more when it comes to coffee, machines that give you almost similar performance when it comes to steaming for a lot less money. For this type of video, my perspective is more from a home user here. Let me start off by talking about why I like the Linea Mini. So some of you guys know I bash on the Linea Mini all the time. It is not very good value for the money, to be completely honest. There are way better home machines out there for the money that give you the same capabilities, if not more, for way less money. Let me now talk about the reasons why the Linea Mini is actually great. So the first reason is actually it's a beautiful machine. It just fits in so many different spaces. So if you're really trying to build out your kitchen and build a space, build an environment, right? I can't really think about a better machine that just fits anywhere. This is a machine that you can put in so many different areas and it will just always look nice. Another reason why the Linea Mini is absolutely amazing, and this could depend on your household, and this might be something highly debatable, is the steaming performance. The steaming performance of the Linea Mini is insane. You pretty much can't get faster steaming at home with something like this. It's insane. It steams super fast, and if you're really making those back-to-back drinks for multiple people in your household, I cannot think of a better choice if you're just looking for pure speed. The other thing too, and this might upset some of you folk who know me, is I actually think the Linea Mini is a very fun machine to use. So for those of you who do not know, this paddle does not actually do anything. The paddle on the Linea Mini is just an on and off switch. So it's just on and off. So that's all it does. You'll feel when you go past a certain point, it's just a switch that clicks and the machine will turn the pump on and all of that. While those of you with E61 flow profiling machines are like, well, that's kind of lame, right? Well, yes, but this is actually built really well, at least with this really nice wooden kit we had on this Linea Mini. It just feels really satisfying to pull a shot, and that's something that you don't really get with a lot of machines, in my opinion. For those of you who are looking for more tactile machines, even though this doesn't really do anything when it comes to profiling, I think it's really fun to use. These are really hard machines to compare because I think the perspectives of why you should use them are a lot different. Obviously, you could say, well, the Decent is for people who want to experiment, and the Linea Mini is for people who just want coffee, right? Well, it's more than that, and I want to talk about the kind of practical usage considerations between this and this. So I'll start off by talking about like ownership, right? Like owning a machine like this versus owning a machine like this. Then I'll talk about more practical things like what is it like to make a drink on this versus this, and then some other random things here and there. So first of all is size and space. I think that is something you should seriously consider when you're spending a lot of money on a machine. You should really consider how much space you have. Now, the Decent here is much shorter. As you can kind of see the profiles of the machines, sort of on camera here. Remove the tablet, and you can totally remove the tablet on the Decent, right? This is much taller, but it's also much longer. So I think for a lot of people who've never seen a Linea Mini in person, you kind of don't realize how deep the machine is. Aside from this machine being much larger, a lot of the pieces of the machine also get really hot. So if you have a small space, you might not want your room to be super hot all the time. This isn't really much of an issue with something like the Decent. Another thing to consider is also the weight. So if you want to move your machine from like point A to point B, the Decent is about 30-ish pounds. It fits in a suitcase. This thing's heavy, and it's also big. If you wanted to move your machine around, you're gonna have a pretty rough time with the Linea Mini compared to the Decent. You can literally use a transport mode on this, whereas on this machine, you obviously have to like empty the boilers out. Some other physical differences between the machine is, well, obviously drip tray space is a little bit different. The Linea Mini is much wider. There's a lot more space here. The other thing too is the steam wands. So steam wands are about the same when it comes to like how far you can move things. They're both like the 360-degree style, except for the Decent can literally go, I guess, 360 degrees. The other thing too is like physical differences, right? Like all of your data is displayed on a tablet here on the Decent, whereas on the Linea Mini you have actual pressure gauge, but I don't really think that pressure gauge does much because the machine, as long as you hit 9 bars, you should be okay. You can't really profile with this machine in the stock form. Some other differences are like the reservoirs, right? So reservoir on the Decent is back here and it has to unlock and slide out. You can fit way more water in the Linea Mini's reservoir. The drip trays of both of these, the drip tray on the Linea Mini is actually magnetic, so it kind of clicks in like that and then you can move it around. The Decent drip tray is kind of just a piece of ceramic that you can remove. Another thing too is the water spout. So the water spout of the Decent is under the group here, whereas there is a dedicated little small spout on the Linea Mini. Both of the portafilters are this straight style one. You know, they're pretty interchangeable. You can put either of them in. One thing too to note is when you pull a shot in the Linea Mini, there are shot lights, no shot lights here. The actual controller here will light up. Now let me talk about day-to-day. Like if you woke up in the morning, what is the difference between making a drink on the Decent versus making a drink on the Linea Mini? The biggest difference between the two is the heat up time. So the Decent takes about 4 minutes to heat up. Linea Mini, I like to wait about half an hour. So you definitely want to have the machine on some sort of smart switch or something in the morning. This thing you kind of just turn on and you're ready to go in a few minutes. Another thing that people talk about a lot with comparing the Decent to the Linea Mini is the noise. The Decent uses vibration pumps, Linea Mini has rotary pump. This is really down to personal preference. Difference is, do you want clicks or sustained noise? Another really big difference between the two is how do you actually pull a shot. So the Linea Mini has a paddle, and I've mentioned before, the paddle is just super fun to use, even though it doesn't really do anything. Whereas here, it's just a start-stop button, and in order to control the machines here, you have different controls on the Decent on this touchpad, and you just will tap each of them to do a different function. On the Linea Mini, there are basically, you know, the La Marzocco twisty dials, and then also the paddle. Some like super small things are also shot timers. This Linea Mini has been modified to have a shot timer, but that doesn't come stock. This with the tablet and actually a lot of other machines now I'm thinking about it, there's literally a display that will tell you what is your shot time looking at. You know, if something breaks on these machines, what is the process here? So Decent, you obviously can send it to Decent. La Marzocco is like kind of the snap-on of Espresso, so there are a lot of places you can get the machine serviced at. Another thing to consider is the fact that the Decent allows you to use a Bluetooth scale. You can basically stop at weight, stop at volume, do a bunch of really cool things with a scale, and it makes just using the machine a lot easier, whereas with this, you have to manually stop your machine every single time. Okay, super quick clip here that I wanted to add in here, which is talking about the communities behind both of these machines. With the Decent, you are buying into a community called a diaspora or diaspora. It is a online forum created by Decent themselves. So if you ever wanted to actually get access to, say, the founder or an engineer, it's actually fairly simple. If you have a problem with the machine, you can 100% talk to somebody who works at Decent. That's not necessarily the case with La Marzocco. La Marzocco is a huge company, and actually the best place to get support, in my opinion, is through the wholesaler. So if you buy through someone like Clive Coffee, Prima, just use them and you'll get taken care of. Online also, it kind of feels like most people who are talking about the Decent are either Decent owners or they're people who are, I guess, fairly well educated when it comes to espresso and coffee. With something like the Linea Mini, it doesn't really feel that way. That's kind of my opinion on it. A lot of folks who are talking about the Linea Mini are people who don't actually own the machine or who have never used it before. So that is kind of what I've observed. Does that really matter? Maybe, but thought I wanted to kind of flag that. Those are just basically some quick differences between, I guess, accessibility and online communities regarding these machines. And I think it's something to seriously consider as an owner if you really want to invest time and money really into these machines. Now I'm gonna go over some more subjective qualities of the machines, which is like, you know, quality of coffee. And then I'll talk about steaming, which is probably what everybody cares about. And then some other notes. Obviously with this, in terms of actual capability of making coffee, I think the Decent is just simply superior. You can do everything this can do. This can really only do 1 to 2 things depending on what year Linea Mini you have, whereas with this you can literally do anything. There's only one type of thing you cannot do on the Decent, which is extremely high flow rate to fill. For example, on a spring lever machine like the Londinium that will fill at 25 mils per second, you cannot do that on the Decent. Now you can't really do that on the Linea Mini, and a lot of people with Linea Minis actually lower the flow rate because it turns out with some of the lower flow rates with flat profiles, that's kind of the easier way to go when it comes to pulling proper shots. People like to lower the flow rate. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But you obviously can do profiling with this and do so many different types of things here. The Linea Mini is stuck to whatever flow rate you set it to, depending if you modify or not. That does not mean that this will make bad coffee. You can get some really great shots with just a flat profile. If you don't want to ever touch profiling, this is just a pretty good choice. Here, you can do the same exact shot though. You can pull flat profiles. You don't, pretty much what most people do is they figure out the profile they like and they set it and forget it. But you always have the flexibility of doing more. And that's just really fun with this. Another really big difference between the two in terms, it's really down to the steaming. So the steaming performance of the Decent is way slower than the Linea Mini. It's uncontested. This thing is just super fast. Yeah, it's insane here. I think the quality of steam, I think a lot of people might actually prefer it out of the Decent because the quality of steam is just much drier. So for example, here, and I can actually put this up here too, 360. It's much drier. Like there's really no water that gets sprayed everywhere. You can even adjust the steaming pressures and you can really fine tune what steaming power you want. This is so much faster. Now, I don't know if that actually matters for some people, especially at home, like unless you have a really big household and you're making milk drinks back to back to back. Speed-wise, they feel pretty fine to me. The difference here is that it takes me about 30-ish seconds to steam 6 ounces of milk with the Decent here. This is the 1.3 Pro, whereas on the Linea Mini, it is like under 15 seconds. It is insanely fast. So I really like that with the Linea Mini. It's just you can really just bang out those milk drinks for your friends and family. Obviously, you can't steam and pull a shot with the Decent, but the steaming is instant. If you just pull a shot and you want to steam, the switching between the two is instant. You basically pull a shot here, then you stop it, then you switch to steaming, and you're done. Another thing to note is this is kind of steaming practices with both of these. The Decent here has an auto purge function. So, and there we go, there's the auto purge. So you start the steam, it'll auto purge for you. It is also steam on demand. So you don't actually have to purge the water out of the steam on traditional boiler machine. Both of these steam wads don't really keep milk on them. They don't really burn too much. So they're both like pretty easy to work with. I'm now gonna go over some more like in the weeds differences between these two machines. The first one, which I think is actually pretty notable, is the cup tray. Okay, so there is really no cup tray on the Decent here, unless you buy a custom-made one and you want to use this space as a cup heater. Your tablet takes up space here, and whereas on the Linea Mini here, look how much space I have. So this entire top space here, I can keep my cups up here and they're gonna be warm. So you can't do that on the Decent, and I think that actually matters to some folk. Also, the thing is with the Decent is you can make pour-overs. You can use the pour-over basket. You can make amazing pour-overs. I have to make a video about that, but you can make pour-overs with the Decent. You can also make tea with the Decent. So you can use different portafilters in here, different baskets in here, and you can make more drinks. That's a little bit of a completely different conversation there, but you can indeed do other things with the Decent than just make espresso. Another thing I think people ask about a lot is like, what is it like to use this machine without the tablet? Because honestly, if I take the tablet off, it's exactly like this, where you're just hitting a button or a switch here to start the shot here. So that's like what this is. But you know, they're both espresso machines. You still have to prep your puck. You still have to do all of that in order to pull a shot. It's not like this is different than this when it comes to general workflows. And this is really for more of you commercial folk out there, is that this is NSF certified. So you can actually use this in a cafe reliably without risking your insurance or anything going wrong. The Decent right now is not NSF certified. Whole entire other conversation regarding regulations, but I just wanted to note that. And that's really why this is just a really great choice if you're trying to use it in a commercial aspect. But that's pretty much it. Those are like very quick differences between the DE1 and the Linea Mini. I think really this is so much stronger in a commercial aspect than the Decent. But, you know, they're both great machines. Like, I don't really have problems with either of them. I think just for home, specifically for the home, I think there are just more options out there. But, you know, people ask me this question all the time, and that's my take on it. So thank you again for spending the time to watch this video. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you around.